because of too much debt. Since 2009, the debt everywhere has skyrocketed. The world has never seen anything like this accumulation of increase in debt. So the next bear market has to be the worst in my lifetime. We had a big problem in 2008 or so, and then central banks and governments around the world started printing and spending and borrowing money like never in recorded history. If you give me a few $1 trillion, I'll show you a very good time. I mean, the world economy has been flooded with money and spending since then. America has never gone so deeply in debt so fast as we have done in the last decade, more than a decade now, 13 years. So yes, we're all floating on a bit of artificial stimulation. It always comes to an end, no matter how much you pump into the economy. It seems to be coming to an end. Inflation is coming back, which leads to higher interest rate. Some people are starting to say, wait a minute, this is too much debt. This is absurd. Not everybody. I mean, the Japanese are still doing it. Yeah. But some people are starting to question how much more we can do. So I'm not sure if the world has come to an end yet, but I do know it's going to come to an end eventually in the form of another bear market. And you remember 2008, we had a big problem because of too much debt. Since 2009, the debt everywhere has skyrocketed. The world has never seen anything like this accumulation of increase in debt. So the next bear market has to be the worst in my lifetime. I mean, it's simple arithmetic. The debt has skyrocketed everywhere. It's going to lead to a problem someday, and maybe today is someday, or maybe it's already in process. Given that the people in the Federal Reserve are not very smart people, they're academics and bureaucrats, they mainly want to keep their job. What they will do at the first sign of some good news, and it may already be here, they will start talking about and even acting on slowing down. It sounds like they're going to slow down for a while because they think things are better, and they may be, at least on paper. But eventually, they're going to print money till we run out of trees. That's what all they know. If there start to be a lot of bankruptcies or even a few bankruptcies, they will get phone calls from people saying, you must save us. This is a matter of Western civilization. You must save us. They will panic and they will print more money. I don't think that in the history of the world, many central banks have said, too bad, guys. It's time for a lot of bankruptcies. Go down the tubes. That's not the way bureaucrats think. That's not the way academics think. And the end result will be not good for you and me, but it might temporarily save their jobs. Let's go back to the last time something like this happened, which was the 1970s. Inflation kept getting worse and worse, and the central bankers made it worse and worse. But then the president, who was Jimmy Carter at the time, said to Paul Volcker, who he was going to appoint he did appoint as head of the Federal Reserve. Volcker was a bureaucrat, but Volcker understood the situation. And Carter said to Volcker, you do whatever you have to do and I will support you. Mm-hmm. Now, Volcker didn't believe him at first, but Carter reassured him that he could do anything he had to do. And in the end, of course, Carter lost the election because Volcker did what he had to do. Volcker knew what had to happen. I mean, this will shock some people, but interest rates on Treasury bills, short-term U.S. government Treasury bills went to over 21%. 21% on Treasury bills because Volcker tightened and tightened and tightened. And Carter said, okay. Carter said, okay. Well, it caused bad times, but it killed inflation. Carter lost the election, but it did kill inflation. I don't think that there's a politician in the land today who would do that or support that, and I'm not sure that many bureaucrats. I don't see this guy we have now as another Paul Volcker. And again, in Japan, the head of the central bank has said, I will print his word, unlimited amounts of money. And he's doing it. And the Japanese politicians say, do it, do it, do it. I mean, unlimited. It's unbelievable how much money that guy prints. But so he's certainly not a Paul Volcker. I don't think we have a Paul Volcker in the U.S. And eventually they will cave in. You said interest rates are high. Well, they're higher than they were a year ago. But I want to hearken back to 21% Treasury bills, which have happened and can happen again. Late 1970s, America as a nation was still a creditor nation. We had debts, but it was on balance, we were still a creditor nation, which we remained until the mid-80s. So there are many different things now, as far as we are concerned, we being the United States. And our situation is much, much worse. And these guys in Washington are making it very much worse every day. Not every month, every day. They're making it worse. If the Congress cannot act, that's good news for most of us, because, they don't usually do good things for anybody except themselves. As I said, if there's good news on the horizon or starts happening, it's a signal to the central banks, hey, we can ease up. We don't have to be so bad for a while. And that makes many people in the markets more enthusiastic and more confident. And we have big rallies.
There's a lot of signs that the economy is really struggling right now, and not just in the US, globally. And I want to get your thoughts on recession, because I have heard in some of your recent interviews that you may believe that we are due for the largest recession of our lifetimes, or your lifetime here. So can we start with that? What's your outlook for economic growth going forward? Is it indeed that dire?
First of all, I would remind you that we have periodically had recessions since the beginning of time. It always has been. I presume it always will be. But Janet Yellen said, who's the Secretary of the Treasury, said, no, we have figured it all out. Don't worry. We have it under control. Well, she's got degrees from a couple of fancy Ivy League schools. So if you believe her, then don't worry, Washington's sorted all this out now. I happen to know she's wrong, and I happen to know that we will have recessions again in the world. And the next one has to be very bad. As I explained, 2008 was a nightmare for many of us, for many people. Since then, the debt has gone up by astonishing amounts. You cited some numbers before. Pick any numbers you want. They're terrifying. And it's continuing to get worse every day. So the next time we have a problem, it's just simple addition. Look out the window. The debt is skyrocketing everywhere. So the next problem has to be very, very bad. It'll be the worst in my lifetime. And I'm older than you, so it'll be the worst in your lifetime too. I didn't say it'd be the worst in the world, the worst in history, or anything like that. I just said in my lifetime. I would cut government spending with an axe, not with an axe, with a chainsaw, because the situation is dramatic. It is historic, and I would stop printing money. I would let the market decide what kind of interest rates the world needs. We've had 3 central banks in American history. The first 2 disappeared. This one is probably going to disappear too eventually, because they keep making such horrible mistakes. But if I were doing it, I would get rid of the central bank. I'd let the market determine interest rates as it has in the past, and the world somehow survived. Yes, we had recessions, but we've had recessions since the beginning of time. You and I are not the first people to know that we have hard times sometimes in the world and in history. It's been going on for many decades, many centuries. You keep talking about high interest rates. These interest rates in the United States in 2022, by historic standards, are not high. They're higher than they were a year ago. But look back at the history of America, the history of any country, but since we're Americans, these are not high interest rates in American history. So they have the scope and the historic precedent to go much, much higher, which I suspect they will, for the reasons that we've discussed. And that will have a dramatic effect on housing. We have had a huge amount of home building in the last decade or so. I don't have the numbers at hand, but I know everybody has been building housing. Some would call that a bubble, but even if it's not a bubble, it has certainly been a boom. And when that comes to an end, if your house goes down in price, it doesn't affect you too badly unless you have to sell or something. But then when your neighbors' houses start going down and your relatives' houses start going down, then you really feel the pressure, because if I have to sell, or whatever wealth I thought I had, I don't have anymore.